Good evening, LEC community. Welcome to our conversation this evening around the importance of dual language programs. My name is Edgar Palacios. I am the founder of the Latinx Education Collaborative, and we're working on increasing the representation of Latino educators in K-12. I'm excited about this topic. This topic is an important topic in our community. We are seeing the beginnings and the growth of dual language programs in the Kansas City area. And so we're going to bring in some of our experts and some of our community leaders who are leading these programs in different districts and seeing what's working, what's not working, and what we can do as a community to support these types of programs. Having said that, I'd love to welcome our moderator for this evening, Dr. Socorro Herrera. Dr. Herrera, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, and I agree with you. This is a topic that should be front and center in our communities, across the state, and definitely in our public schools.
Absolutely. And now you've been doing this work. You are the executive director for the Center of Intercultural and Multilingual. I just lost the A, the Academy.
Advocacy. I was like, oh my gosh, Edgar, you are the first person. People are like, let's keep it intercultural and multilingual advocacy. And yes, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm originally from Nuevo Mexico, from New Mexico. You know, we have a history with dual language, with bilingual education since the beginning of time. And that was my preparation in the 1980s. So for a long, long time. And I actually came to the state of Kansas, to Kansas State University, because Michael Holan, my dean for a long, long time before he retired, that was his commitment and passion. And so he said, they're not going to believe what you say, but you know why it's important. And I think you have the commitment, the passion. So here I am. As I was sharing with you earlier, unfortunately, during the ANZ initiative, that was the push for an English only across the country. It started out in California and then spread like wildfire across the country. The state of Kansas in 1997 decided to do away with the endorsement for dual language. But we're here and we're strong. We've not stopped believing. And I think our new Secretary of Education, Secretary Cardona, is setting the world on fire, and definitely the nation, and I think the world, with what he believes and how important this is to him.
Absolutely. Before we bring on our panelists, do you want to add a little bit more context to the state of dual language programs or multilingual education in our community?
Well, I think that the excitement with me being at K-State and, like I said, having lost that endorsement in the preparation of dual language teachers is that we're hearing the rumbling, we're hearing, the fire, the passion, the commitment has been set again. And there are some great programs that are they're in different stages. Topeka Public Schools has programs that I think have been in existence for a while. The Olathe schools have Mike Clinthrop that has been doing a great job. Jacqueline Rodriguez out of KCK. KCMO has some great programs. And I think that people are beginning to understand that there are over 11 million, let that sink in, 11 million emergent bilingual children between the birth and 8 years old in the United States. That makes up 33, and I think we should hear that, 33% of the young children in this nation. Yeah. And so we know that there's evidence that dual language programs are what it takes, to be effective, and yet only 8% of our children are being served in dual language programs. English-only programs only get students so far, cognitively, academically, social-emotionally. We have all the evidence. And so I think that in the Midwest, in the state of Kansas, in the state of Missouri, Nebraska, the initiatives are there, the schools are asking for it, and now we just need to keep our communities also asking for it, so that we begin to reinstitute these high quality programs that our children deserve.
Well, you named some of those folks, and those folks happen to be some of our panelists today. So I'm going to bring them onto the stage, so to speak, and I'm going to exit the conversation. But
Okay.
Dr. Herrera, the show is yours.
Okay. Hello to the three of you. I'm so excited to be engaged in dialogue because I mentioned your names already only because you're the ones that make my heart beat and keep me going in this field after 40 years. And so you heard, there's 33% of the nation's children between birth and 8 are bilingual, emergent bilinguals, and we know that there's evidence that dual language works. We also know that there's no national database that really has tracked the effectiveness of dual language programs. And so the 8% that are being served comes from a database of just 5 states. And so there's work to be done. And as I shared earlier, Secretary Cardona last year declared that bilingualism is a superpower. And I know all 4 of us here are bilingual. And I know probably a lot of the people who are joining us are also bilingual or have an interest in becoming bilingual. Across the world, most nations have bilingual, trilingual, multilingual, adults and young children. And so we need to jump on the bus and also declare bilingualism a superpower in our spaces and increase the number of dual language programs and then increase the number of highly qualified teachers. So I'm asking you to engage with me against that backdrop, the very few programs that we have and the urgency with this. And I'm excited because you're experts in this field because you're on the bus and you are advocating like nobody's business. Like I said, the 3 of you excite my world since I'm at the university and I know the real work happens in public schools. And so I'd like everyone out there to welcome Jacqueline Rodriguez from KCK Public Schools, Olivia Flores from Kansas City Public Schools from Missouri, and Mike Flintrop from the Olathe Public Schools. And I want each of them to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about the work that they are doing before we engage in posing questions.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Herrera. It's always a privilege to be in community with you. I want to touch a little bit on your data, what you're saying, because Kansas City, Kansas Public School District actually has 40% of their student learners that are coded as English language learners. 60% of our student population on their home language survey say that they are Spanish speakers. And so that work of bringing bilingual program is critical and crucial. And we have an urgency because our numbers continue to grow over time. We are a baby program. We just started last year with 3 elementary schools. This year we shifted to 2. But all of the students that were served at that 3rd school were welcome to join. So we have almost 200 kids that are going to be served in our kindergarten and 1st grade in a bilingual program.
That's great. I'm going to call you Mike because that's what Michael, Mr. Flintrop, what would you like to share about your space?
Great. So we are entering our 5th year of our dual language immersion program. So our little guys are now going to be in 4th grade. We started in kindergarten. Our demographics are a little bit different. We have about 14% of our student body has identified that have Spanish in the home and their native language. However, we also have a broad range, about 20%. So every 1 of 5 of our students. So similar to what you were saying, it's not a third, but it is a 5th of our students are multilingual. About 89 different languages from 101 different countries. So we have that linguistic diversity, and definitely the needs is there as well. And we've seen a lot of success with our students and their motivation at school, their learning, and their parent engagement as well. So we're really excited to continue our program.
Great. Olivia?
Hi, I'm so excited to be here with all of you. My name is Olivia Flores. I'm a teacher in KCPS, specifically at Paseo Academy. Our KCPS dual language programs have been around for a while. We have 2 language immersion elementary schools that have been doing a great job. We have Carver Elementary and we have Foreign Language Academy. But our middle school to high school program, which I believe is the only program of its kind in this region right now, is turning 5 this year as well. So we serve 7 through 11 right now. We'll graduate our first class next year. Right now, I believe we are serving about 100, a little over 100 students. We, in our school district, I believe we're 26% multilingual with 43 languages represented. And if I'm getting these numbers right from last year's data, 65% are Spanish speakers. So obviously a really high need in our district. And we're very excited to be next year K through 12 in Kansas City School District.
So each of you has a very unique context in which you are working in, and yet the context can be different but what we can't dispute in the work that we all do is that there are great benefits to dual language programs. And I know, Jackie, you've been doing this, even though you're in baby steps in the KCK public schools, you've been doing this before you arrived at KCK public schools. And so I'm going to ask you the question, what are those benefits that dual language programs have for students, especially within the Latino community? Each of you shared that the highest percentage of students that you have are Spanish speaking. So what have you observed? What data do you have that that shares, what are the benefits? And if you can speak to specific examples or success stories, that would be wonderful. And so I always love to do a connected talk where we're in conversation. So, definitely, I always try to be quiet so that I can hear from the three of you.
Yeah, I think the science behind the brain and the cognitive benefits are kind of like always our seller points with parents. Like we talk about, and yesterday I had the privilege of welcoming our new ESL teachers and our returning ESL teachers for professional development. And we talked about that cognitive load that a student has. And so when we look at our kindergartners and our first graders this year, we know that for some of our kids, that cognitive load has now balanced because they're not having to navigate between just English. And I think a success, and I'm going to talk about our current program because you're right, I do have a long standing with Spanish and being a teacher of that myself. But to see a student who is a newcomer walk into a classroom and be able to talk to his teacher and be able to feel successful and then watch them move over to their English teacher and connect the dots because the content is there and they have the background knowledge, and to then build their English. And we have some fascinating monolingual students and multilingual students. To watch our students that already have multiple languages in their linguistic repertoire take Spanish and devour it. They are our fastest readers. And it is just amazing to see. Our kindergarten program last year, we introduced writing really early on, even before our traditional English courses did. And it was just great to see the data and the students really excel in that.
Yeah, I can jump in a little bit with our benefits. My context is a little different. So our middle school to high school dual language program is a track within a signature school in our public school district. So our kids, our school is 38, as of last year, I believe 38% Latine. And with that comes a lot of opportunity. Our school also has the largest neurodivergent population in the district, a lot of specific programs there, the largest deaf and hard of hearing program. So in our school, the linguistic richness is incredible because you'll see students who are signing, you'll see students who are communicating in other in different methods, and then you also have our multilingual students. And I think the beauty of that diversity, not just with language, but also with identity. We're a performing and visual arts school. We have lots of majors that students specialize in. So I think the research is extremely clear of like the benefits, the cognitive benefits, the academic benefits. Our data from our program shows that our dual language students outperformed their monolingual peers in almost every subject. And I only say almost because our English data wasn't ready by the time we pulled it. Our multilinguals, or our ELLs, who are in our dual language program, tested out of their status at double the rate of those who are not. I mean, the data from our program and nationally is extremely clear, but I might take this answer in just a slightly different direction, if you don't mind. I think the biggest benefit I see from our dual language program is actually the liberation that all of our students feel when you make it a norm that a person can have a multidimensional identity. And this is coming from me. I'm multi-ethnic. My father's a Mexican immigrant. My mother is second generation Irish American. And so I've had to reconcile this my entire life. And I find it so inspiring that our students who are, we have Afro-Latina students. We have students who, like Jackie was saying, monolingual, African-American, multilingual in other languages other than English and Spanish. And to see them enter a program where the entire school gets to witness and accept that we are learning in a different language, and that you can be, for example, in our school district, African-American and multilingual and an arts major and whatever else, is such I think, a liberating thing that, if I may be very hyperbolic, will revolutionize U.S. Public education in general, I think.
I love those two words, liberation and, revolution, because you're absolutely right. Our students just need that. They need that space to be able to be themselves, and
We all do.
to position themselves. We all do. We all do. Mike.
I don't know if they left me anything. Those are all amazing points. I really like what Jackie was saying, and I can piggyback on that, is that it's that cognitive load, especially in kindergarten. We really work a lot with our early literacy and the phonemic awareness. And when you have students that are who speak only Spanish, and then they're trying that in English, they have nothing to connect it to, they're overwhelmed, they can't fully relax, take it in, and participate. Even though we have some amazing teachers that work with our students in those programs, our kindergartners who are not in a dual language program, they aren't able to really express themselves. When they do their lessons, for example, on social emotional learning, they can't make those connections. They can't think about it unless it's done in Spanish. And so in our dual language programs, if you just observe the students, when they're able to make kind of connections with words they know, when they learn how to read and they're able to participate and they can raise their hand and they can say anything they want, it's exciting. It melts your heart, because they are participating fully in school because they can, and they don't have that language filter as well. And so it gives them confidence when they're able to raise their hand and participate, and they get the math concepts, and then we can speak with parents about, this is what we're learning, and this is the new vocabulary, and this is how you can help them. Parents feel like they can be more involved in school and the learning because of the language. So there are many benefits, but my biggest one that I see is that students can fully participate in that school environment much easier with the language piece.
And all three of you are so absolutely right on target. I always ask myself that I wish there were research that is done in dual language that really explores what happens to the socio-emotional aspect of the learner when that revolution, when that liberation happens, when that language load is addressed. Will our behavioral challenges maybe not completely disappear, because then that would be magical, and would we even need socio-emotional programming? Because a lot of what we see is that there is this tension for the learner in not being able to express, and not being able to fully participate, and being so stressed with that language and that cognitive load, that the second that they're liberated to be able to to bring their full linguistic repertoire into the space, they really, really engage and move forward, and it's a no-brainer that the academic achievement comes so easily. And so it leads me to ask the question, historically, and I know all of you have engaged in reflection and thought and learning in this, that for the Latina community, there's that history of wanting to re-engage in community in our language, to reclaim the language that historically is either taken away or we were given permission to use. So when you think about linguistic preservation and you think about cultural preservation, how do dual language programs contribute to that, and what are the implications then for cognitive and social skills? So
I can start on this. This is so personally connected to me and my experience in the classroom that I feel like I'm gonna burst just listening to you talk, Dr. Herrera. I'm like, it's so meaningful to me, the idea of what you're saying, like recovering like language and culture. That was personally my story, and I know a lot for a lot of students, they're also grappling with this daily. And so in my high school classroom, we actually last year created a class for students who went through dual language elementary school programs and who were too old to begin with a cohort in middle school when we started the program. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we had like 11th graders who were bilingual but had no opportunity to flex their multilingual education because the opportunity wasn't created for them. But at the same time, we had like 7th and 8th grade cohorts. We created a class to capture those students in the same class. So it was upperclassmen 10 through 12. Recovering bilinguals is what we called them informally. And there were so many tears in that class because there was so much shame coming from a lot of different directions. And I know the people on this call can understand. I'm sure people who are watching can as well. There were some students who identified as Latine, maybe first or second generation, who didn't speak Spanish at home or maybe didn't communicate in Spanish at home. There were students who did, but no matter, and then we also had students who were, for example, Afro-Latine, and their father communicated in Spanish but didn't communicate with them. It's like an identity that most people don't know about them. Or we had students who were monolingual, Caucasian, and grew up in a bilingual program, but also didn't feel acknowledged that was a part of their core identity growing up. And so with this mixture of students, and of course, a variety more, but with that mixture of students, it was just all of those emotions combined. And then there was me as their educator, out of more necessity. I'm not a native speaker, so obviously not as ideal in a multilingual classroom, specifically dual language, Spanish language arts. But in this classroom, it was kind of, it was healing also for me to be in this space. As an emerging bilingual, I learned Spanish at more fluently at 19 years old through a fluke when I was able to earn a national scholarship to study abroad. And that completely changed my whole world because I had felt an aching to recover my language. And although there's complications with Spanish specifically, I know I have community members and colleagues who are decolonizing their tongue, also learning their native languages too, and indigenous languages. That it was so important to me to learn Spanish culturally and personally. And so in this classroom, it was just that was one of our central themes of learning. And I think we can all agree that in dual language, you cannot teach in a multilingual environment, or excuse me, two multilinguals. It was full Spanish immersion without covering also the culture, the emotions behind personal identity, the context in the United States. Why is it that I don't speak Spanish? Why is it that my family didn't teach me Spanish? Why is it that I feel like I have to whisper in the hallway when I'm speaking my native language, for example? So there's a lot of different elements to that. And it was just such a pleasure to participate in that specific class.
Yeah.
I can go ahead and jump in. I think you talked a lot about the social, emotional, and the belonging of the students in the program. We see that the students, especially if they've just moved into the United States and started in kindergarten, or are in an environment that, if they have been in a Spanish-speaking environment most of their upbringing, even in the United States, the school can be very overwhelming, and they can feel like, oh, this is not my school. This was my neighborhood, but now this isn't my school. Because my neighborhood, I felt like I belonged. I felt like I could communicate. I knew what was going on. And then they walk into a school where, if they don't have a dual language program, or if you don't have a lot of that native language being used for transition or for working with students, they can feel like, wait a minute, now where am I? This isn't my community school, or it is, and it feels like that whole different place. And so with the dual language program, we find that the students, they're welcomed in Spanish, and they're in their school, and they can participate, and they know that, okay, yeah, I do Spanish for most of the day, and then I have English because I'm learning that language, but I'm still learning how to communicate. I'm learning math, I'm learning science. So it feels more like school. It doesn't feel overwhelming to them as much at all. I mean, it's a completely different environment for them, and I would like to see that research on how they develop as children, as human beings, when they can express themselves in different ways and have that ability to do that.
Well, you do know there's a doctorate that you can pursue, and that can be what you study. Just thought I'd throw it in. Go on. Yeah.
I know you've approached me multiple times about that doctorate.
Yeah.
We need the research, but I would say, I do want to just comment on something that Olivia said, is when we think about our programs, we think about like the right fit teacher, and you, my friend, are the right fit teacher. You have so much passion for this. Mike and I, as former Spanish teachers, know like the stretch it is sometimes too, of being native, not native speakers. We're speakers of languages, and that's the idea of a dual language program, right? Like, what's the liberation that we can have in being able to communicate in what my dad often calls like your heart language. Your heart language can be whatever you want it to be. Sometimes for us in community, it's Spanglish, it's Spanish, it's English. But to see children language in a way that makes sense for them, and to play in that way, like that's true joy. And for our Latino kids or Latina families, like that is something that we have not always been afforded in the classroom. And so I think that like that is one of those benefits. That's those success stories. We also have to think about like our teachers that we have brought in are deeply committed to this program, because they had what Olivia kind of hit on. It was this like liberating moment of where they're like, wow, like I hope that they will be in our program forever, because their passion for just themselves being able to open up the scope of language. And then when our schools open up to the opportunity for families to come in, we had one of our schools do a family day, and the parents came in and to see our Spanish speaking moms come in with the coolest crafts that they brought in for kids to work side by side. We say like family engagement is also a part of that student success. The way that we engage families is through welcoming environments. We welcome environment by opening and breaking down those bridges of language. So I do think like all of the things that everyone else said, but also those components have a huge impact on the success of a program and being able to develop and grow it.
Yeah, you're absolutely. Go ahead, Olivia.
Well, I just gracias. Thank you so much for that, Jackie. I would also just like to add, I think when we're talking about like education that's liberating, I think I'm going to bring this back to this is specific to Latina students, but also to our students who are their peers in the dual language program and around our school. Like I said, my program is specific to is a track within a school that is primarily African American, and it's such a great opportunity. It is so beautiful, and it is also complex. It is also so complex to be in a school system with a sudden increase in our Latina population. And I think we have to be very, very intentional about acknowledging where our educational systems and where our society really has not served our populations well enough and have not resourced them well, and have the basically reconciling the fact that we have an ugly educational history in the United States. And what I really truly believe is that dual language can be a vehicle to healing for all populations and in different ways, right? I think that it would be serving people in different ways, just like we know that the benefits for our Latino identifying students is incredible. We have research and data on this. I think what I'm gathering at my school is data on both groups, those who are Latine and those who are non-Latine. And what I'm finding from our survey results thus far is that students feel a lot more comfortable since over the years that we've had the dual language program expressing themselves. But I also want to investigate what is the opportunity we have for creating an environment and making it a norm that people can speak in different languages, trans language, like communicate and express themselves generally how they want. And I think our Latine population, our Afro-Latine population, our every population deserves to be in a space where it is the norm to accept difference, to accept diversity. And so I think if we can make dual language, like you were saying, Dr. Herrera, to start this conversation, if we can make it a norm in public education where we're leveraging the linguistic richness in all of our communities, I think it's just one step in healing and reconciling a history where people were stripped of their languages, of their culture, but also made to feel like those all couldn't exist within structure. So I think it's a step. And I think when we introduce students, and personally in my school, in my district, to the idea of multilingualism as a norm, something changes in their mindset and their perspective. Spanish might not be their language. Spanish might not be connected to their cultural upbringing at all. But that student is going to live their entire lives understanding and knowing and accepting that difference can exist in the linguistic sphere, but also that it can exist in general. And we know that those rates of students feeling more empathetic towards others, being more comfortable in multicultural environments are there. But I'm just excited to see what more research we have, the more programs that we have, and the more widespread it is.
Well, and that's the research we need to be doing, because the reports that are coming right now is that there is a dearth of research that is conclusive across the country. And we have lots of anecdotal, and we have some qualitative, but surveys. And, that's an area that really needs to be targeted. And as I listen to the three of you, you've all hit upon something that dual language programs have the capacity to create an ecology of healing. And so it moves beyond just our students. Oftentimes people who don't understand say, oh, they're doing something for those kids that don't speak English. Or we have the opposite. Sometimes in affluent places, it's like, oh, it's dual language. And that would be a whole nother conversation. But we need to again, I'm going to use the word liberate, that it's okay to be able to speak whatever language in whatever space and feel comfortable with it. And I think that that's what happens. And I love that, we talked about parents. Parents feel that. Oftentimes when you're in a monolingual space or in a school with only English as a second language programs, parents come in and they don't feel free to speak their language. And even if you have a Spanish English dual language program and you have Chinese students and Arabic students and German students in the same school, it liberates their language. I mean, so that we could talk about that one question, preserving the culture and language. But I think the number one thing we have to do is really create these ecologies where there is no shame. I wish we had time. I'd tell the story of a young man who's speaking in Washington, who was an intern and at a conference. I was the migrant conference a couple of weeks ago, and he apologized for translanguaging, and it was like, oh, that's still left in this beautiful human who's an intern in Washington D.C. who is doing phenomenal things. That has to disappear because he was speaking to mostly bilingual individuals. But we need to go to the next one, and a few of you touched on this. Because boy, do I feel the energy all the way over here of the passion and commitment that all three of you have for this. But we know that all of this, even in our own spaces, Kansas State University, we don't have an endorsement for preparing dual language teachers. What are the most common challenges faced in implementing and maintaining dual language programs in schools? Because we're still fighting contra la corriente. I mean, we're like trying to see when the current is low so we can go across really fast and get what we need done, all of us. And I think a lot of people across the country are having those challenges. So, what would you want to say are our most common challenges in all of this?
Well, I will jump in. I will say for us, it's finding teachers to implement the programs and to be part of the programs. I will say the main reason why we don't have more bilingual programs in Olathe is not because of the community support. It's not because of our board. It's not because of our superintendent or the funding. It's because we can't guarantee to find the teachers for that. That are Latino or want to, that have that background. They're just not there. And we're really trying to grow our own, and we've been bringing a lot of students, our multilingual students, our high school students to the program and showing them, hey, is this a program you'd like to teach in and be part of? And many of them didn't even know that exists. And right away, many of them are like, it hits their heart. It's like, I remember being in the seat, or I would have wanted to be in the seat. I want to teach in this program. And so trying to find teachers to do that. And then also showing teachers, we have some teachers that are multilingual or are Latina, but then they're like, I don't want to teach in Spanish. I want to teach in English. I want this school or this program. And it's okay. Well, I try to convince them and I try to bring them in, but it's also educating them on, no, but this would be really great. You really want dual language, but it's showing them that it's possible, I think is a big challenge. And then also it's not supported in the mainstream. And what I mean by that is I get a lot of resource emails from vendors that say, oh, here's a great resource for your ELs. But it's all about, here's a resource we've created so you can pull them out of the mainstream and tier 1 instruction, and you can teach them English to raise your test scores. And I always fire back and I have no idea about language development. This is not what we want. Why don't you send us resources to better help our teachers or better help co-teach, or send us resources for dual language models or for community. And that doesn't help us any when we try to show what is the best program out there. So for us, I think a big challenge is just finding teachers and having that awareness piece that dual language exists and that it's a possibility. So we really try to push that out to the media and do our teacher education programs. So I go to different universities talking about, this is a program you could teach for and you could be a part of, and that really helps us. So I think for us, it's really just finding teachers that want to do dual language and that can. And then I love that there are so many programs in the area, but then we all compete for staff too. So that it makes it more difficult.
And that's a conversation Mike and I have quite often when we get on the phone
Yes.
or texting, where I'm like, hey, did this person apply for you? We're like, this person's in our district. Don't hire them. We want them. So it is competitive. It is, there aren't teachers. And then when you do find the teachers, because I can only speak for Kansas, we don't have that bilingual certification. So then you're a person like me who is bilingual, but I may not have the academic repertoire yet because I didn't learn that way. So then you're having to provide professional development to the teachers on how to teach certain concepts because it is new to them as well. And I think that's probably the one thing we hear the most from our teachers right now. And again, we've only got kindergarten and first grade teachers where they really want support on pedagogy around how to be a teacher of language, but also be a content teacher so that our students are there. I echo the piece of mainstream. I think that's a continuous battle. I think that policy at the state level, as well as like sometimes the policies that happen in certain school districts, like that's a huge impact on what we can and cannot do in the programming. And so until our states come along and understand what it is, we won't necessarily find the backing that, like Dr. Cardona talks about, that funding is there, but we need the states to grab on, and we need them to provide opportunities for licensure. What we find in our district is we have a lot of people who are certified in other countries, but Kansas is so restrictive on how we can bring people in to move their license that it's so difficult. We have a pool of teachers that we could pull from, but unfortunately, I would have to send them to go get another degree, to go do something where I could realistically, I just want to put them in a space in front of kids and watch them thrive and watch our kids thrive. But I would say resources, teachers, and then just the policy and implementation at the state level sometimes are barriers to growing a program and sustaining it.
I am in the classroom still, so I have the privilege of getting to see our students thriving all the time, and I also have the privilege and responsibility to be present to try to mitigate the challenges that we have on a regular basis. I think as heartened as I feel when I see our students I'm switching to Spanish in my head. When I see our students inside of a culture that we've created, our dual language track culture, and also fully integrated our school, as much inspiration I feel. I'm losing my thoughts. I don't know why. This is the group of people who know, like when you can tell that I'm translating from Spanish to English, you can tell.
Well, don't translate. Just say it in whatever language.
Yeah. It's when I start saying things. Yeah, you get me. But anyway, as heartened as I feel being around my students, it's also extremely disheartening when I kind of take a step back and realize that I'm doing a lot of advocacy for a program that is working and for a program that is already existing. We are constructing a plane as we're flying it, and our students are soaring, and they're amazing. They're some of the highest performers in their grades. We are participating in a 4-year pilot with UMKC, so that I believe last year, if not the year before, I haven't checked this since last year, but our students were the youngest students in the state to earn dual credit. Mm-hmm. Our students will graduate within 2 credits of the equivalent of a Spanish minor by the time they graduate Paseo from high school, if they continue to earn dual credit every year and continue to take Spanish language arts. In addition to all their other dual credit, like if they're taking dual credit math or my AP literature course, I also teach in English, AP literature and composition. They can also earn dual credit with that. So the academic results, the increased test scores, those are coming in part from our student body and the phenomenal students who are not in the dual language program at my school. And when people see the results of our dual language students, they say, wow, everyone needs to be in this. Everyone needs to have dual language. And I admit that I believe that our district can do better in terms of recruiting students from various populations and in various parts of our community to enter dual language who are not native Spanish speakers, for example. It's just difficult for me to wrap my head around the idea that I would need to advocate, or my community or my families or my students need to advocate for something that is working so well, and for something that is so beautiful, and for something that has been existing for so long. And the fact that our community members are not aware, for example, our Latino community, the fact that our Latino community does not know that we have K through 11 dual language in their neighborhood, in a public school, is, I believe, an equity issue. It's an equity issue. And the fact that our programs are not fully funded, that we don't have curriculum stipends for our teachers who are writing curriculum that's never existed before in our area, like combining Missouri standards with our University of UMKC dual credit standards combined with ortografía, with the best practices in dual language, they don't have training, they don't have stipends, they don't have time. And I'm one example of this, but I speak for my team. I speak for like a population of teachers that are in your programs as well, I'm sure. And that is I think their biggest challenge is it's here. People don't know about it. And people who do know about it are not informed or invested enough to invest in a program that we know serves so many people and serves all students.
Oh my gosh, that was a loaded question for me, and I love the way all three of you answered, because I'm going to take a step back as a university person who has this bird's eye and really is not in. I'm only like have a very, very narrow window to districts, and when I think, about policymakers and community, all of you have hit it right where it is. It's that there are districts that are, where there's great support, central administration and beyond, superintendent, community. And there are districts where we're having to advocate, where we're having to educate, where we're having to do so many things, and kind of along with all the other things that are loaded upon each of those individuals who lead these efforts. And so there's two questions that are left, and we have very short time. So I'm going to combine them. Well, there's actually like three. What do we need to do, what can we do with educators, policymakers, and communities to have them see the impact that this would have on the workforce, on the future, on global competitiveness, in a multicultural world? What do we need to do? And what do others need to do? What do parents need to do, those in the community, to be able to have these great educational systems, to have institutional structures, institutional buy-in, institutional support? What is it that we can do? What can we, each of us, go out and do? What would you recommend?
Go ahead, Mike.
We all have ideas. We all want them. I would say I've seen the biggest one is just educating individuals who don't know about a program or know what the need is. I mean, even our Board of Education is amazing, but they're what somebody sees, if it's a parent, if it's a board member, if it's a teacher, it's only what's in their community. It's only what's with their students or their family. And so one of the biggest things that worked for us is one of our previous superintendents had been superintendent in Wichita, where they have a dual language program. He says, well, why don't we have that? The board, when they went on their retreat to a conference, went to a session on dual language and said, well, why don't we have that? And I'm like, great question. Let's go. And so it was more so that they saw, hey, this would be great for our kids. And letting them see that. We also, how many of our Latino parents go speak at the board meeting and say, my child has trouble communicating in school. He feels like he's not able to read, and he wants to read, but he doesn't understand the words. We don't hear that as much. Our parents don't always speak up and say, what's happening to my child isn't okay, or it's not right, or it's not. And so just educating, I think, is the biggest thing. When I talk to our board, who is very supportive, and I say, this is better for our kids, they said, okay, then why aren't we doing it? And so I think the biggest thing is just to let people see. I have found not to assume they're not an advocate until they know what they're advocating for. If they don't know it's not there, then you can't blame them for not advocating for it. And so that's the biggest thing for me, is what I have found is just to get out there, show them, be proud of your program. And if you don't have one, go see one. We have a lot of districts come see our program. I'm sure they visit your programs and they're like, why don't we have this program? Why don't we have it for our students? And you can't accept, well, we don't have this. Okay, let's get that. I always look at, when you come up to a wall, is it a foundation wall? Is it a wall you can't pull down, or is it a wall you can? Is it something you jump over? Is it a hurdle? and you just start tearing things down until you get what's best for kids. That's what I like to do. So
I love that.
I can see all the time.
What kind of one? I love that.
I think just to piggyback on that component is oftentimes these programs are set as like pilots. Like the idea is there, but we really need to move away from, we don't need to pilot this anymore. There's over 30 years of research behind bilingual programs, dual language programs. There's nothing to pilot. Put the resources behind it and let experts be experts. If we stop looking at the academic data the way that we do, again, we're talking about, at least in my district, it's kindergarten and first grade. There's not a whole lot of academic data. Let that magic happen when they get to third grade and fourth grade. Program after program, all of the research says there's something magical that happens at that third and fourth grade level where it clicks for kids. We often forget it takes 5 to 7 years for students to learn language, but we put a moving target because the standards change. So I think that's something that we could do. But again, like the education, we try to, we are so privileged that in our district, our parents were part of that conversation and continue to give feedback. But that's only because my superpower is to be bilingual and I can engage with them in Spanish and get their feedback for what our program looks like.
Well, I love the three of you. We're almost out of time. I'm going to leave the last of those questions that I kind of like combined and leave it with the best strategies are to teach them, educate them, and have them know what they're advocating for. And I think all of us would agree that we need to institutionalize this. This needs to be part of the institution of public schooling, the system, the structure, and all of that. And so I want to thank each and every one of you. I think Edgar is going to join us again, or maybe someone. We only have a very few minutes to have questions from those of us that are joining us. And so, see, did you see me wrap it up like, Olivia, no puedes decir nada porque ya se terminó el tiempo. Nos está poniendo allí, mira, 5 minutos, 4 minutos, 5 minutos.
I have one proposition, but I'll wait to hear if I can say it.
No, absolutely. Go ahead and say it. I'm going to bring in some community voices into this, but Olivia, go ahead.
Well, community voice is most important. I would just like to say this coalition, or like bringing dual language teachers together, I think Kansas City is in the perfect time right now, the right people in the right spot to talk about dual language, and not just Kansas City, in this region. So I'm proposing we come together. Thank you, LEC, for doing this. We have families are ready to work together and see best strategies for this. I'm proposing a conference for dual language leaders in the area, and specifically for students too. I know Dr. Silva has been talking about this, like a conference weekend for students. And I'm also proposing that a bilingual camp from Washington State come to us here in Kansas City and implement our model with our students. They're ready.
Sounds good.
I love that idea and that challenge, Olivia. And I got to be honest, all credit belongs to Jackie Rodriguez, who attended one of our recent events, one of our recent socials, and we were talking about this and how important this issue is. But also our responsibility as an organization to elevate this issue for our community, right? And to elevate the people who are doing this work day in and day out. And so I want to make sure that we properly credit where credit is due. And so. Yeah. Just quickly here, we have some folks who have been watching and engaging. This has been a hot topic on our socials. And so just quickly want to shout out to Liliana Mariaca. Hopefully I said that right. There's some agreement there. Yes, Olivia. Turn the table, scholarships for bilingual teachers, promote a better payment for bilingual teachers and other bilingual staff. Some advocacy issues there. A shout out to Mr. Flinthorpe. Great to see you again. We had Dr. Silva with us. We need to train teachers who serve our multilingual students to use resources to provide high-level literacy skills, to access the best educational spaces, no matter if they're bilingual themselves. Some claps there. One of our colleagues, Dr. Clark, living here in San Diego, speaking in multiple languages at school is the norm.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like it's a norm everywhere these days, or it should be the norm. And then there's some questions. Liliana, if you want to just clarify, this was in the middle of the broadcast, so where, or Dr. Herrera, where? I don't know what that's referring to, but maybe Leanne is still with us. Also, she's working on her PhD in that research, which is going to be starting this year at Carver Dual Language, I believe.
Oh, good.
A shout out from Petty Renteria. Great job, KCPS. Keep up the great work you're doing. Awesome for the students. And that's it from the community. So we have 5 minutes left. I'll use that time just to say thank you to all and thank you for your participation this evening. We will definitely continue this conversation and see how we can help support the creation of spaces for these types of dialogues to continue. And then I can turn it back over to you to say maybe one last thing that you may have wanted to say that you forgot to say, but to close us out. And so we'll start with, let's start with Jackie.
Well, first of all, thank you for opening up the space. Like I'm so appreciative of the work that you guys do because, right, we talked about our biggest struggle is teachers, and the Latinx Collaborative is built to bring in those teachers. So I just want to thank you for the space and time, and of course, to be in community with my people. I have really strong relationships with everyone on this panel, and the passion seeps through all of that. But we're here to continue to educate. Please reach out. Like I want to give back to the profession and figure out how I can support and continue to learn and grow.
Just to piggyback on that, thank you very, very much. My message always to our teachers and all of our staff is just that it's our community, and we want to look at what's best for our community. How do we embrace our community? How do we love our community? And how do we give kids what they need to be successful? And just to keep doing that, and then just expanding it to it's the Kansas City community. So how do we come together to the individuals and the families and the cultures that are that make up our community, that is us, regardless. And so we have to do it together. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Olivia.
I was allowed to say everything that I wanted to say because of your kindness and everyone just being so supportive. But I have to say again, thank you to everyone and on this call, and then the leaders in the dual language community in the region and nationally. Everyone has been so supportive of our program, of Kansas City, and this is such a personal topic for me as emerging bilingual again. I'm just so inspired, and I'm excited to collaborate, and I'm excited for our school year to start in just a couple weeks here, or August 19th.
Thank you, Olivia.
Okay. With me, I'm so happy that you asked me to moderate with these three amazing experts who I admire so much. And then I'm one of those that starts seeing the time, and I'm like, but they all have so much more to say. So I was glad, Olivia, that you got that last little bit in. And so thank you. I keep moving this forward. I love the idea of a conference. And so if you want to, K-State can co-sponsor, collaborate toward that. Maybe we can have it on campus. We can have it in Kansas City. But I would love for this summer to bring the Besitos students back together as a reunion on one day, and then do a conference maybe for a couple of days. So I'm super open to that conversation.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and we're happy to support and host as well. I mean, whatever we can do in Olathe for sure. Same
is true for KCK.
Well, I love this.
It sounds we're going to do some mini summits, all building up to a larger conference, and that's exciting. And we'll definitely be supportive of wherever the efforts lead to this. So. Thank you all for an amazing and incredible conversation today, and for taking the time to be here with us this evening. And thank you to the LEC community for joining us and for participating in this conversation as well. We appreciate you. We love you, and we want to make sure that you're entering the school year excited and energized for what lies ahead. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll connect again soon.
Bye.
It was like us in the way. We're sitting there like in the arena in Las Vegas, like.
When I started this LEC community,